من أكثر الأسئلة it is a very important question. من أكثر الأسئلة المهمة اللي دائما بنسأله إنه هل عن جد المقاطعة BDS بويكوت ممكن تخلف أثر، ممكن تعمل أثر إيجابي أم لا؟ نعم نعم نعم. ليش؟ أنت اعتبري حالك كل راند بتحطيه ببراند اللي هي تدعم الاحتلال، هو هذه المصاري بتروح للاحتلال. الاحتلال بيشتري فيها رصاصة بتخ فيها طفل فلسطيني في غزة وبالضفة وبالداخل وفي القدس. كل مقاطعتنا لهذه المنتجات والبضائع والمؤسسات التي تدعم الاحتلال وأيضا اللي هي نفسها إسرائيلية تعني عدم إدخال مدخول مادي للاحتلال اللي بيقدر فيه يتطور أكتر ويشتري أسلحة أكتر ويقتلنا أكثر. فمهم نقاطع كوكاكولا، بوما، في كتير يعني ممكن you can search in internet and see what are the products. ما بعرف شو هم كلهم، بس مهم نقاطع، مش إشي بالعكس. يعني هذه يمكن هذه يعني بالنسبة إلي أكتر إشي مفيد ممكن يعملوه الشعوب برا، أكتر إشي عن جد ممكن يخدمنا، بالإضافة طبعا للأشياء التانية.
Okay.
عربي إنجليش. Arabic and English.
So she started with saying yes 3 times to the efforts of boycotting and organizing together locally. That's a very important step that you have done. She also said that every rand that you actually deprive Israel from, when you boycott Israeli product or you boycott companies or brands that support Israel, you are depriving Israel from that money. And the money which Israel is going to use and to buy bullets or to produce bullets to kill us, to kill our children when they're at home. So boycotting Israel, and I may add from myself here, knowing that there is at the moment in South Africa a campaign to boycott clover, right? And I would say that look at the local community, what is actually the collective effort for boycott, and I think that is I would say more strategic, so we can have a more impactful campaign. And there is already a local organizations like the BDS coalition and other groups, other coalition groups that are in Palestinian solidarity movements that are constantly looking at what is new that they need to boycott. And I think, and this is, by the way, I'm adding a little bit here, sorry, because I know the South African context a bit better than Muna. So I'm sorry, as a man I feel now like I've done something wrong. Okay, let me stop here. Thank you.
The next question, sister, about the teacher there at the back here. The mic.
Okay. أما بالنسبة لنصيحتي إلك يا معلمة للأجيال القادمة، الأجيال الصاعدة، أهم إشي وأول إشي هو الوعي. هون نفهم شو القضايا اللي بندافع عنها، نفهم التاريخ، تاريخ جنوب أفريقيا، تاريخ فلسطين، تاريخ النضال، تاريخ الأبارتهايد، تاريخ العنف، تاريخ كل جرائم الحرب اللي حصلت من إسرائيل أو من أي استعمار آخر. والشغلة الثانية هي إنه نحن نآمن بقضايانا العادلة. أنا قبل تقريبا كم من شهر كنا على كلاب هاوس بدنا نحكي عن الشيخ جراح، فقلت لهم إنه يا جماعة أنا بحكي معكم وأنا تقريبا فاقد الأمل إنه مش رح يصير إشي، لأنه إلنا سنين بنقاتل وبندافع، ما رح يصير إشي. الناس دعمتني وحكت لي لا استمروا إحنا معاكم، فضل عندي هذا الإيمان بقضيتي إنها تستمر. والحمد لله أنا وأخوي وجيراني كل الشباب في الشيخ جراح وفي مدينة القدس وكل فلسطين كلهم تعاونوا سوا وكملوا في هاي الحملات، وآمنا بقضيتنا. فهاي نقطة جدا مهمة إن إحنا نآمن بقضايانا. إذن الوعي والإيمان بالقضايا، وآخر إشي هو التحرك، نعمل نفعل مش بس نحكي.
So she just threatened me. So her advice to the teacher and to the future generations is that, one of the most important things is knowledge and understanding what's happening, understanding the history behind everything that's been happening, whether it's in Palestine, in South Africa, or in other parts of the world where there has been, colonization, occupation, injustice, and understand the level of of brutality, the war crimes that Israel has been committing in Palestine. So understanding knowledge. And being conscious about what's happening in Palestine and elsewhere is very important. The second point is that we should never lose hope, and because hope drives us, to fight even more. And she mentioned how one day, a few months back, I would say around November, she was in Clubhouse where she was talking to a few activists, and she was telling them that I feel like it's almost useless to do anything because there is no hope. Because in a month's time I'll be out of my house, and we don't see that there is anything being happening. Basically, like she and her neighbors, they will all be kicked out, if they don't do anything. And she had already, lost hope because they have been fighting for years and nothing had happened by then. But then the activists online, they encouraged her and they told her that we will support you as well. And with the solidarity, from outside of the neighborhood, whether it's in Palestine or from the international community, encouraged her to continue, with her fight and to go then to social media and we see where it is now. And the last point is that it's important to act on the ground, to be active on the ground wherever you are. Whenever you see that there is something happening for Palestine, go and join that. And hopefully together. So, and stand up not only for Palestine, but also for justice all over the world. Wherever there is injustice, we fight against it. And thank you.
Jazakallah khairan. We've heard a beautiful statement, Sister Lubna. I don't think that requires any response. Before we go on to Sister Zinat and Sister Safira and the young ones there, I just want to say the scarf that I'm wearing, I wore at the border. Sister Zinat was with me there at the time when we were fighting for the liberation of the 600,000 women who are in rape prisons in Syria, and for the 6 million who've been killed, and there's something like 16 million who are displaced. So we're in the struggle all the time, and I want to thank the South African National Muslim Women's Forum for raising that 1.5 million to send for the orphans of Syria. So this is the struggle scarf, and I wear it last time when Sister Lima came, I wore the same thing because it reminds us never to forget. Never to forget. I just also want to say there is a painting behind me here. Can you see? That is Al-Aqsa. Am I right, Sister Muna? That is Al-Aqsa. It's a mosque in Al-Aqsa. All right? Right. So there's going to be a bird. Anyone wants to bird. It started at 5. We are not collecting money for Sister Muna. This is for South African National Muslim Women's Forum. So if anybody wants to buy it, you can go to 5 million. We will say yes immediately, sir. The minimum is like 5,000. We can go up to 5 million. I mean, if you are well to do late this year, I saw the cars you're driving. So anyway, now I want to go on to Sister Safira, who is from CRI International, CRI Radio. To ask a few questions, to ask a question. She is doing live CRI, we're live on radio at the moment, goes to 165 countries. So Sister Safira, over to you, then Sister Zinat and the young girls there.
Assalamu alaikum, Sister Muna. On behalf of CRI Radio Online, we'd like to welcome you to South Africa. We're thrilled to have you here, and I think this is the demonstration of the power of social media. My question to you, however, is that, social media is very powerful. You alluded to it in your discussion. How does one circumvent the bans on Instagram? We continuously, in our organization, face these bans on Palestinian content. So how does one circumvent these bans? Just now, we were trying to go live on our CI page, and we got kicked off the page. So that's my question to you, and thank you so much for joining us for a lovely discussion this afternoon.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and welcome to our guests Mona and to Mizan. Thank you for bringing her out to South Africa and so soon after the sorry, can you move a little bit that way? The camera doesn't want you behind me. Forgive me. I'm getting signals from the camera. I think that it's really important having Sister Muna out here as one of the first visits after the lifting of the ban on travel to South Africa. I want to make a few comments and then go to some questions. The first thing for me is, Sister Muna, we remember you from the clips that we saw earlier on TV. And I also remember around the time the protests that were happening in Jerusalem, looking at the young women with smiles on their faces as they were being taken away to the prisons, and doing so with such joy and with such pride and with such honor. It instilled that in us, to look at these young women, teenagers and in their 20s, standing at the front lines of this fight for justice and for equality. And I think that was the most admirable thing that we could see. I'm really pleased to hear what the work that Mizan and Friends of Mizan are doing in terms of trying to liberate the prisoners. And I think it's very important to look at the broader injustices that are happening around the world, where we have Muslim prisoners who are still incarcerated. We're looking at Guantanamo Bay, for example. We're looking at some of those who were liberated recently from Bagram in Afghanistan. And I think we resonate with those because in South Africa we had so many of our leaders who had been imprisoned in Robben Island and in other prisons and who had suffered similar kinds of fates. I think that I want to also appreciate what Lubna raised around the World Conference Against Racism. That was my first trip officially, not as a diplomat. Before I became a diplomat, I was part of the NGO Secretariat, and we undertook a 3-week journey to Palestine and to the occupying powers. And we visited and met with people on the ground for those 3 weeks, which was really intense, to come back and report to the World Conference Against Racism in Durban, and to set that agenda that allowed for what Lubna had reported back on. We are 20 years since then. My real disappointment is that in the 20 years, Palestine has lost more land, more people have been displaced, more people have lost their lives, and we are losing the battle. So what is it we need to do to change that narrative? It was a victory 20 years ago, but we now have a wall that wasn't there before. You have more people being prevented from reaching the olive groves that they are growing their olives on having just a dignified life. I remember walking in Hebron and going into somebody's home. She had been living there and literally caged her entire home because the settlers kept throwing rocks and stones and other weapons into her house. I remember weeping in Gaza because I just couldn't bear to see these children under that continuous bombardment. At that stage, it was still occupied and not just the prison that we see it as today. And it breaks my heart to think that the situation has worsened since then. I also want to raise a few things from a diplomatic perspective. I had been with the diplomatic service and worked in Israel and in Palestine for some time. And I must say South Africa has stood in the front lines from a diplomatic perspective at the United Nations and elsewhere, and we are very outspoken as a South African government. But more than the statements, we haven't done much in many years. We used to have programs where we would bring people here, we would share our experiences, and we would have constructive work of them going back and rebuilding and looking at governance issues and looking at trying to liberate Palestine. We're not seeing that as forthright as we used to see it. And I think that there needs to be a lot more pressure applied on the South African government to start doing much more than just making illustrious statements that are beautiful, but it's not much more. We need your guidance, Mona, on what it is we need to do to apply that pressure on our South African government. I think that we also, as a community, need to start understanding what the military-industrial complex means, how Israel is part of that, and how it is a global fight. It's not just in Palestine. They are practicing their weapons, using it on the Palestinians, and then exporting it to places like Kashmir, exporting it to places in Africa, in Somalia, in Central African Republic. It's coming closer to home in Mozambique, and we need to understand what's happening in these countries and not just buy everything that's been handed handed out to us. We need to hold them to account for the war crimes that they are perpetrating, not just in Palestine, but worldwide. And lastly, I think that Sister Safira mentioned the issues of trying to circumvent the blockades that we have on social media. We need social media in order to get the messages out. That's how we saw Muna. Without social media, we would not have known Muna.
Yes.
And we would not have known her brother, who I must say writes so beautifully. I love his writing. Please convey that to him. But how do we do that, and how do we circumvent those hashtags, and how do we work around the surveillance capitalism that is happening to mine our data and to control what we see and how we react to what we see? And lastly, we spoke about the boycott. There is an app called Boycott. I would suggest that everybody downloads that app. It helps you to understand what boycotts are happening on what products, and to scan your products and understand whether or not that is on a boycott list. Sorry, 2 more points.
Okay, very quickly, because
Last.
you forgot about the...
Very
sister,
important
yes.
is the African Union is had the debate this week. The African Union is losing the battle in terms of having Israel wanting to have an observer status to the African Union. Many countries are in agreement with Israel. Very few are working with South Africa, Algeria, Nigeria, and others to try and get Israel out of it. It's going to heads of state level. And finally, a question, is, besides funding, or if we were to give funding, where does that go to, and how do we channel that? And besides funding, you've mentioned that we need to be more active. What can we do? Practically, what do you think we as South Africans can do? I'm sorry for taking so much
No problem.
time.
Can we send the mic to Sister Bilkis across, and then we'll come to the young ones last. You want it to be dynamic. I want to yell scream. While Sister is taking it off to that side, Sister Muna, you can follow her on Instagram, Muna Al-Kurd. You can follow her right now, follow her, and then you can get all her posts, inshallah. Increase her followership, and then you can get first-hand information coming up from Sheikh Al-Jarrah. So, Sister Bilkis, over to you.
Assalamu alaikum. My question revolves around a solution to the problem which started in 1948. To many, it appears as if that two-state solution... Oops.
I think it's cut somewhere.
Okay. To many, it seems like the two-state solution is no longer an option because of the continued building of settlements on Palestinian land. So I would like to know, from a Palestinian perspective as well as a perspective of young people like Muna, what is the way forward? What is the solution? How do they see the way forward? Is a one-stage solution possibly a reality in terms of what is happening in Israel and Palestine at the moment? Thank you.
Jazakallah. Sister Hawa Patel is going to be just posing one more comment, and then Sister Muna will respond, and then we'll take the girls. How many of you girls, just raise your hands? Just 2. Should we take all the questions one time, Sister Muna? There's 2 more. Should we take all the questions one time? One. Oh. Okay.
Can we answer some? 15.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do it after this, after Muna responds. Hawa is just saying something?
Okay, with regard to the painting, it was sponsored by an artist, Firoza Umar from Nelspruit. And inshallah, the highest bid, please understand that it is going to the South African Nationalist Forum, but it is going to go to the cause of the oppressed people. So it's going to be given to people who are being oppressed, inshallah. The other point I'm making in response to the educationists that are here and people who are part of the book club. We have the ladies from the Roshi book club here too. We at Roshi Islamic School 5 years ago introduced the book Morning in Janine's. Have you read the book? So it's by Sister Susan Abulhawa, and that book, I've requested that it be a second set book for the grade 9 learners. And every year I ask the children about what they learn, and emotionally, or they go through this journey with this youth. So please encourage Islamic schools to introduce as a second set book, and at your book clubs and social gatherings, encourage people to read the book to understand how young children go through the oppressed situation.
Jazakallah. Sister Mona, will you answer those questions, and then we'll go on to the... we are running, you'll have to keep your questions very short. Sister Mona is hungry now. So, yeah, keep your questions now very, very short, right?